Welcome to Quilt 101. Today, in this episode, we are going to teach you how to get started with prepping your quilt for quilting.
So now's the fun part where we actually get to start getting our quilt ready to be quilted. So now we have the quilt top is all nice and done, and we have our batting and we have our backing fabric. Now, the first thing we do is we sandwich the quilt. And so what that basically means is that you have your quilt top, your batting, and your backing fabric. Now, each of those things kind of serve a different purpose, and they're all very important in a quilt. So the top piece, like the top of your quilt, is usually the decorative piece. It's the quilt, you know, it's the part that you've been spending so much time on. And the batting is what adds the warmth, is what adds like the a lot of the body. It adds the just like the comforting feeling of the quilt. So batting is really important, and we'll talk about different batting options in just a minute. And then the last part to quilting, like the sandwich quilt, is the backing. And the backing is simply just a solid piece of fabric, of cotton fabric, that complements the top of your quilt. So all three are really important. And there's also some other accessories that you'll need to have as well.
So there's a couple ways that you can sandwich your quilt. If you have a really big table at your house, you could use that. You could use your floor. We don't happen to have a really big table, so we're just sharing with you our method of sandwiching the quilts. And so what we need for that is you need clamps. So 4 clamps, you could just raid these from a hubby's toolbox, or
also gives you a nice hand workout.
or run to the local hardware store.
Yeah.
They don't need to be expensive. These are actually pretty heavy duty ones.
Yeah.
These actually take some muscle to open these up.
Yeah. But I got these at a hardware store.
You'll need basting spray. There's a couple different types of basting spray. If you have a local craft store and they have coupons, you could always use a coupon and go buy some. This one's called 505, and we've used other brands too. Now, if you choose to not do this method, you can use pins, but we use our home machine a lot, and we typically, well, Emily does huge quilts. I typically do smaller quilts, so I really like the basting. I like how it holds it well together for doing our own home machine quilting. But a lot of people use pins too. So if you don't want to use sprays, then you'll still lay your quilt out and sandwich it, and then you'll pin about every 4 to 6 inches with these pins.
I recommend this method, you guys.
Yeah, we actually prefer this one.
It just makes things so easy.
Time means a lot to us, and it definitely goes quicker by using the spray. And once you wash your quilt, the spray comes out of the quilt, so there's no
harm.
No harm,
No foul. Yep.
So as far as batting goes, there's lots of batting out there. We usually use one of 3 different battings, so we're going to share you what our favorite battings are.
I'm really picky about batting, you guys. I'm very picky. I like my batting. I like my quilts to be really snuggly, so I like thin batting. That's just me though.
And thin batting is a low loft batting. So this one here is a low loft batting.
How that just like
so Emily
scrunches up.
sewed up some samples. Low loft is real drapable. It's really good, especially for your home sewing machine, because there's not as much bulk to work with.
Yeah, and it just
So that's one of my favorites
really
too.
easily.
It just gives it a really snuggly quilt for a little baby or to wrap up on the couch.
I also like these for big quilts too, because it doesn't add a whole lot of weight. It's pretty thin.
The next one is it's a medium loft. So the cotton's going to be a little bit heavier in the batting. Could be a little bit warmer, so if that's a concern for you, then definitely maybe get the mid loft. It's still squishable, but not as much. It's hard for you to see it, but it's definitely a little bit thicker. Not a lot, but a little bit. The mid loft batting is preferred a lot by long arm quilters. So if you are not going to quilt it yourself, you're going to send it off to a long arm quilter, check with them first and see if they prefer a specific batting, because sometimes they do. But if you're going to do it yourself on your home machine, any of these battings really could work, but the low loft I think would be the easiest to use on a home sewing machine.
Yeah, I agree.
There is a batting that's 80-20, so it's 80% cotton and 20% polyester microfibers in here. And this is really soft too. It's loftier, so it's going to have more volume to it. So if you want a quilt to be thicker, and people do, it's still a great batting. We use this batting a lot too. Yeah. It's just going to be a little bit more volume to it with that polyester. It makes it just a little bit more fluffy, but it's still very soft. The polyester, I would say the 80-20 polyester blend shrinks less, not a significant amount, but a little bit less. So if you like those quilts that have a lot of puckering in it, which I do, but some people don't.
I personally do not like a lot of puckering. I like my quilt to stay flat.
So she would probably use a lot more 80-20 than I would. I like my quilts to have that real puckered antique-y look. So I typically always stick to a straight cotton.
Well, and I typically prefer cotton as well, but it just kind of depends on the project you're working on and just kind of the purpose of it, but it just changes.